Moral agents ought to act in their self-interest. Meaning that if you were acting in your self-interest, and I think the most charitable way of putting this is kind of the metaphor in the airplane. So if you and your child and the airplane is going down need that old sweet oxygen because you want to get high, because again you're just jonesing, and you know it's a scary time, so you want to get really high. Are you going to put on your mask first, or are you going to put on your child's mask? Basically, the question is, and this is a deep philosophical question, are you going to get your kid high before yourself? Oh, hey everybody, welcome. We're gonna talk a little bit about debate bros and debatebro culture, but we're also gonna talk about philosophy. I'm gonna give everyone a very, very quick rundown to Philosophy 101, and that way we can kind of ground our moral axioms together, and it's through that we're gonna become better and hopefully more accomplished leftists, because I think there is a problem, obviously, on the left of us not grounding our moral axioms, or perhaps living too much in the idealism, right? Like we speak a lot about what we have. Well, we don't make as many prescriptive statements as we should. We often say things are bad, and they're bad because I don't like them because they're not fair. But where does that really leave us? How does that increase things? So the reason I think philosophy became so popular in the debate bro scene is for the simple reason that if you want to discuss things, whether it's moral absolutism or anything in relation to what exactly are ethics and how human beings should compose themselves, you need, of course, to have some kind of philosophical groundwork to do so. And there's nothing wrong with being deep into philosophy. In fact, I think that's the coolest thing that's come from the debate bro culture, is it's actually pushed a lot of these, what I assume would be kind of esoteric concepts, into the mainstream. Like now we speak about these kind of things. So that's neat. So philosophy is from the Greek word love of wisdom. Philosophy is the study of questions. After all, values, reasons, language, knowledge, and even existence itself. The term may have been coined by Pythagoras, or most likely by Q. So thank you, Q. I don't think Q has done all bad, I suppose. There's three main branches of philosophy, and I know people are going to be like, Lance, there's four. I'm actually going to group two of them in the same one because they're going to be a little bit pertinent together. But anyways, the first one is metaphysics. And metaphysics sounds amazing. It's the branch of philosophy that deals with the fundamental nature of reality. What is God? Does God exist? What is reality? Are we in someone else's dream? Am I in your dream? Am I conscious, and because of my consciousness, everything around me exists, or does none of it exist? Would any of you exist if I wasn't awake, or if I wasn't alive? Or perhaps I'm already dead? Are we all alive in a turtle's dream? Is this all just one giant orgy of the mind? These are the questions for metaphysics, and no one really delves or dwells, I should say, too much into metaphysics in this realm. All right. So in the debating sphere, we don't really deal with this branch of philosophy too much, but still a fascinating one to say the very least. Oh, and if you want to think of people who are famous in this sphere, Kant, Nietzsche, who of course killed God, Confucius, Plato, and even Buddha. They're all famous metaphysical philosophers, questioning the very nature of reality. How do we know, or how do we ascertain as to what exactly is real in life? The second branch is epistemology, and in my opinion, the most boring of all the philosophical branches, because it's the nature of truth. And anyone who wants to get into discussion of epistemology will, bore each other for a long time. Like, how do we know what is true? Circle jerk, stuff like that. But it's basically, what is knowledge? What is true? How do we know something to be true? So the idea, I think, therefore I am. I'm sure everyone's heard that famous phrase, because you are capable of thinking, you are therefore conscious, made famous by Descartes. Empiricus, another famous sorry, I should keep this up. Epistemology. Oof, I'm doing great at this. And of course, Immanuel Kant, who we'll talk a little bit when we talk about the Enlightenment and things of that nature. Then the third one, and this one is probably the most popular one. This is the one where debate bros kind of reserve themselves, and that is in value theory. Now, value theory is broken up into two main categories, and that is ethics and aesthetics. And we usually concentrate specifically on ethics. So if you want a comparison between the two, there we are. Ethics versus aesthetics. Now, beauty versus reason, rationality. Which side do you find yourselves on, chat? What do you believe? What are you all about? Ethics, aesthetics, as part of value theory. Ethics are less about what's right and what's wrong, and more about how humans should live with each other. So, very, very important stuff. And this is probably why this branch of philosophy is the core of what people talk about when we're in the debatosphere realm. And I'm going to talk about different forms of ethics because that's very, very important. But aesthetics are important as well. And aesthetics is the study of beauty and art. And what is beauty and does it exist? And of course, those who go deep into this branch of philosophy oftentimes claim that they have understood the concept of the beautiful. And what is the beautiful? And can it exist? And you can combine this with other branches of philosophy, such as epistemology and or metaphysics, such as could beauty exist outside of humanity? Could beauty exist if I was not conscious enough to appreciate it? Does my appreciation of beauty coincide with yours? What is consciousness? What is a penis? Are penises beautiful? All very deep philosophical questions that can be answered ideally through the exploration of aesthetics. I hope this has not been too much to handle so much information and not enough penis talk yet. So I'm trying to do my best here. Oh God, and to try and pull everything in. Okay, let's look at logic. What philosophers use to reason their arguments while avoiding fallacies. I'm sure you've heard of logical fallacies, but basically when you're trying to have a conversation with someone and you're trying to ascertain as to whether or not your prescriptive statement perhaps, or even your normative claims are logical. There's different routes to go down that, and you try to avoid logical fallacies because after all, those will in turn probably disprove what you're in fact trying to hypothesize. So the two big branches, and this is what it really comes down to, and there's obviously an infinite amount of variations on this. I'm just going to break it down into two main ones because this is really what I find when it comes down to the discussions and debates that are going on the internet. These are the two big ones that people seem to be concentrating on. Kantianism, German philosopher, 1724 to 1804, Immanuel Kant, I'm sure some of you have heard of him, one of the fathers of the Enlightenment, has come up with the moral framework which is absolute, meaning that morals should be absolutist, and that you have to think of it a little bit as Batman. Batman's probably the best way to compare this because Batman, in some versions of the comics, I know it changes from iteration to iteration, had a code. He would not kill the Joker. In some versions of the comics, right? Again, you could say the Batman is like Immanuel Kant in that he has a codified version of morals and he will not move outside of that, despite whether or not it's for the greater good. The other version, of course, is the one that I find is a little bit more popular, and one that I'm sure most people here might fall under, is utilitarianism. So this is the moral theory that focuses on the results or consequences of our actions and treats intentions as irrelevant. So your intentions, I had good intentions, Marge, doesn't really matter. In the end, you're trying to maximize happiness for the most amount of people. Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, the two OG Brit-bongers, are two of the fathers of utilitarianism. Now, utilitarianism breaks off into a bunch of different versions. So if you say, I'm a utilitarian, that can mean a lot of different things. So what do you mean by that? Are you trying to maximize happiness for the most amount of people? Let's move on to the different forms of utilitarianism. There's act-utilitarianism, actions chosen on their results, meaning if I do an action, what are the results and is it going to maximize happiness for the most amount of people? Rule utilitarianism, which is probably closer to what I'm sure most people fall under, agents should conform to the rules that maximize utility, meaning that if we have decided amongst ourselves as a society that doing X is going to be beneficial for more people, then we should conform to that, and agents, meaning us, should actually adjust and adapt to that, which I think is probably the best way to engage in this. But then there's total utilitarianism. Target utility is the maximum utility across the population, across everyone. So these are the three main versions. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of different branches, but these are the best three ones. I'm trying to, again, summarize and condense all this into the smallest possible package to talk about this kind of stuff. Now we go into something very interesting. Egoism. And egoism is important because at the end of the day, even though some people might want to deny that you're egoists, there's going to be a certain element towards all of you that, of course, engage in some egoism. Moral agents ought to act in their self-interest. Meaning that if you were acting in your self-interest, and I think the most charitable way of putting this is kind of the metaphor in the airplane. So if you and your child and the airplane is going down need that old sweet oxygen because you want to get high, because again you're just jonesing and you know it's a scary time, so you want to get really high. Are you going to put on your mask first, or are you going to put on your child's mask? Basically, the question is, and this is a deep philosophical question, are you going to get your kid high before yourself? Are you going to engage in egoism? Now, the rule would be that if you put on your child's mask first, you might not be able to put on your own, and or you might not be able to put on your child's mask, and in which case, both of you will not get the sweet, sweet oxygen to get high off. However, if you were to put on your own mask first, you will then get your sweet, sweet high, and you'll be jolly and high enough to then put on your kid's mask. That would be, I guess, what the philosophical argument would be when it comes down to that. Now, there's normative or prescriptive ethics, meaning that are you going to say what the world ought to be? So you're going to make a prescriptive claim. I'm going to say, hey, this ought to be this way because of blank, right? As opposed to descriptive statements. And these are obviously going to break down, but this is the best way to understand these as best I could find. Descriptive statements, what do people think is right? Metaethics, what does right even mean? Normative ethics, how should people act? Applied ethics, how do we put this into practice? And this is all important. I know this sounds kind of silly, and I sound like I'm just going on some strange rant about getting children high while you're on an airplane, but ultimately there was a point to all this, and that is, if you happen to be on the internet and you've gone from doing, let's say, playing chess to playing like competitive video games and then entering this world of debates, ultimately when you're having a debate with another person, the reason that a lot of people want you to ground your moral axioms and or state what you believe is very specifically because if we are going to make prescriptive statements, we're going to have to base those on our own and or societal morality. So that is actually important when we're having a conversation between two people. How best are we to ameliorate the world? How best are we to improve the world? And we might get stuck in the weeds in that. But Chad and Lance, are we moral realists or moral anti-realists? Well, that's up to you, I suppose. Now, does anyone have any questions about this? Oh, yes, this is basically the summary of everything I've been talking about. I hope this explains everything.
Would you like a channel which explores leftist concepts in an increasingly competent manner by a PhD researcher in neoliberalism? Well then, I've got the channel for you. My one. Also, if you want to see me gag drinking soy, I do that sometimes as well.
Hey, we want to mutual aid you to get some eyeballs on your work. So if you have a leftist YouTube channel or Twitch stream or something you want us to advertise, just send us a 20 to 30 second ad using the forums at weareserfs.com. We'll do our best to help you out. And please submit once per channel.
To our God, I'm Wrath. We pray at your altar of greatness. To our monarch, Thomas Bone, you are the light that guides our path. To our lords, Jeffrey Lamb, Trevor R., Stephen, Ninetails Cosmic Fox, Hans Josephine, and Poppy Nelson, we bow meekly for your pleasure. To our knights of the Round Table, Josh Mickelson, Dylan Byth, Alexander Thaler, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, Todd Lajeunesse, Clement Chetska, Skybear Games, Moss Beast, Political Puppy, Ali Menthol, Jimmy Bignuts, Alan R., Andreas Chitoro, Good Poon Hates Cops, That's Solid Poon Then, Dr. Zayas, Joppy, Radiclu, Violent Orchard, and Sophie Baby, we salute you. And to our many merchants and farmers, thank you. Fuck you, Lance!